All right, folks, in today's session, I want to give you guys a World War III update. Okay, I'm just going to call it World War III because today's war, it's not necessarily fought 100% kinetically on the ground in the trenches, right? We have a commodity and a currency war that's taking place as well, and it's getting critical, especially when it comes to energy. We're going to cover it in today's session and why it matters to you. Now, I wanted to give the context too that we continue to pray for peace. I want to see U.S. troops brought home. I want to stop meddling in other countries' affairs. So just so you guys have that context when I go out here, and I'm going to give you guys the update and how it relates back to us here back home in the United States, because things are changing rapidly. We just had a new counteroffensive launched in the Ukraine. And Russia says that it has put down the major Ukrainian offensive hours after it began. This is being shared here by Zero Hedge, written by Tyler Durden. Did Ukraine forces just attempt to kick off their much anticipated major counteroffensive only to have it put down immediately after it began? That's what the Russian Defense Ministry suggested early Monday in announcing that Ukraine began a large-scale offensive and mounting attacks along 5 sections of the front lines in the eastern Donbass region. But Russia said it thwarted the major attack and that some 250 Ukrainian troops were killed, which included Ukraine sending 6 mechanized and 2 tank battalions to Russia-controlled southern Donetsk. Now, we've been waiting for this counteroffensive, right? There's a lot of rumors being circulated, intel, that we had a major Ukrainian counteroffensive that was going to be launched here shortly. It looks like it has taken place, and Russia is reporting that they've thwarted it in just hours. Okay. On the morning of June 4th, the enemy launched a large-scale offensive in 5 sectors of the front in the South Donetsk direction. The MOD statement began. The enemy has failed to reach its goals and it was unsuccessful. So we got some pictures here of some Ukrainian tanks. This is not of the actual battle that took place over the last couple of days, but it added that in total, the attacking forces lost 6 tanks, 3 infantry vehicles, and 21 armored vehicles in what would mark a significant defeat if confirmed. And that's the tough thing, folks, is that we're trying to get good intel, trying to get good sources to confirm what's actually taking place on the ground over there. And you know, it's common in war, right, that both sides are going to lie, mislead, and deceive, or not admit what's actually going on the ground. The enemy's goal was to breach our defenses in what they assumed was the most vulnerable section of the front line, the Russian military statement continued. During the day, the occupiers made 23 attacks, but all of them were repulsed by units of the defense forces. The MOD continued in reference to attacks also along the front lines of Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. The ministry further specified that Russian Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov was at one of the forward command posts at the time of the thwarted attacks, while Ukrainian President Zelensky just days ago said that his forces stand ready to launch a counteroffensive. He made not mention of the alleged assault Sunday night when he gave his nightly video address. BBC has remained very skeptical of the Russian military narrative, and yet Kiev has admitted some degree of offensive actions Sunday into Monday, okay? So I'm going to let this play out a little bit more, and then we'll record on kind of what's going on, but we're reporting here live, and we're breaking this situation down in real time. We have the air raid alert sounding. Russia, according to surveillance channels, a group of Russian aerospace forces Tu-95 strategic bombers took off and are flying towards missile launch points. According to Russian military sources, NATO targets have been designated. This was shared at 2 p.m. Okay, so this is about 6-7 hours ago. June 5th. I'm recording this session about 9 o'clock, June 5th. 9 o'clock PST on the West Coast, June 5th. I'm going to drop this one tomorrow for you guys on June 6th. And we have another report here that Ukraine has blown up the I'm butchering this one. Kakhovka Dam. Kherson to become uninhabitable, water supply to Crimea in jeopardy. So we're going to have to watch this one, folks. Did we just get a major dam blown up? Like I said, we got to confirm this. This is unconfirmed, but we got a report here that Ukraine has just blown up this major dam, Kherson to become uninhabitable, water supply to Crimea in jeopardy. So is Ukraine kind of giving this territory up and now they just decide to blow up the dam? We don't know yet, but I will report on this further, folks. So as we continue to break down here, though, You have a commodity and a currency war that is taking place in real time alongside this kinetic war, the counteroffensive that's just been launched, and what's taking place on the ground is what's taking place alongside this commodity and currency war that we see continuing on a daily basis. Gold Telegraph reports the Venezuelan president has arrived in Saudi Arabia for an official visit. Venezuela has the largest amount of oil reserves, and Saudi Arabia is number 2. Both are looking to join BRICS. The stage is being set. Now we got a few here from the Kobesi letter. Saudi Arabia has now voluntarily cut 1.5 million barrels per day of oil production this year. OPEC has cut over 2 million barrels per day this year. In total, OPEC has now cut 3.7 million barrels per day of production since 2022. So we have major cuts in production coming from OPEC. Are we about to see oil shoot back up again? This is 4% of the entire global demand. Interestingly, a third of these cuts came as a surprise cut. They also come as the U.S. has publicly stated it wants to refill its reserves. The energy crisis is real. Yeah, good luck filling back up those reserves, right? Well, I guess we can just print the funny money to buy that oil, right? Summary of the OPEC production cuts from the Kobesi letter right here. Saudi Arabia to extend 500,000 barrel per day cuts until 2024. Saudi Arabia to cut an additional 1 million barrels per day voluntarily. Iraq to extend 211,000 barrels per day cuts until 2024. Russia to extend voluntary production cuts until 2024. OPEC agrees to new production target of 40.5 million barrels per day. This comes after Saudi Arabia told oil short sellers to watch out. OPEC is not messing around. And like I've been talking about, these countries don't have a choice. They've been backed into a corner. Obviously, Saudi Arabia and others sitting on a vast amount of resources. And we covered in last night's Sunday night session that Russia has now taken $12 trillion worth of energy natural resources from the Ukraine region. So whether Russia is going to win the war or not, they've already seized and taken over $12 trillion worth of resources within Ukraine, okay? So you guys are seeing they're not playing around, they're not messing around, and they are starting to take over some of this energy. Meanwhile, they're cutting production back home. Very interesting. Now, we continue here. Kobesi letter summarizes all of this OPEC cuts here in this thread. 2 months ago, OPEC announced surprise oil production cuts of 1.65 million barrels per day. The U.S. called this inadvisable as it tried to fill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, we are the laughingstock of the world as we try to advise others on what they need to do with their oil, right? Now, OPEC made more voluntary production cuts. This is an energy crisis. The energy crisis is not over, folks. And we see here the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was established to protect the economy and strengthen national security during major oil supply disruptions. In 2020 alone, over 221 million barrels were withdrawn from the reserve. The SPR is now at its lowest level since 1983. Now think of what that would have done to inflation last year. When inflation was peaking out at nearly 10%, according to the CPI lie, manipulated phony fake numbers from the government, just think of what that would have done to the energy costs and how that would have affected the CPI and inflation numbers if we wouldn't have opened up our strategic petroleum reserves that are supposed to be set aside for wartime efforts, extreme measures, but we did it for political reasons and to rein back in inflation. They dumped 221 million barrels were withdrawn from the reserve just in 2022 alone, folks. Look at this chart right here. You can see the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was tapped at a historic pace in 2022. Absolutely drained it, cut it in half. Not good. In October 2022, the Biden administration announced its intent to refill the SPR. The White House released a statement saying they plan to make purchases when oil prices are at or below $67 to $72 per barrel. Well, what did Saudi Arabia says? Those that are shorting oil better watch out, right? So those that are looking for $60 to $70 per barrel oil better keep on hoping and praying because it ain't coming. Many have called the depleted SPR levels a major geopolitical threat. Absolutely. Just 2 weeks ago, Saudi Arabia told oil short sellers to watch out. This came right as oil prices dropped back into that $67 to $72 price area where the U.S. wants to refill the SPR. So go figure, right? Right as we get back down into that target, Saudi Arabia says, yep, I hope you enjoy it. Hope you're able to pick up some because we're sending this thing back up. Short sellers better watch out. OPEC has never been more compliant with production cuts than they are now. Yesterday, OPEC extended cuts and Saudi Arabia made voluntary cuts on top of 500,000 barrels per day cut in April. Saudi Arabia will cut an additional 1 million barrels per day. These cuts are for 1 month, but may be extended. Bring on the pain. And folks, this is not good. This is not good for us Americans back home. Are they preparing for more oil prices dip back below $70? Are they preparing for more oil prices dip back below $70? Sum it all up and you have the chart below. Every time crude oil prices fall back into the $67 to $72 zone, OPEC takes action. It's no coincidence that production cuts begin when oil prices drop below $70. This is fueling inflation. Are energy resources being weaponized? 100% they are. That goes without saying. The global energy crisis is complex and remains one of our biggest economic problems. Inflation is still out of control and higher energy prices won't help. Weaponization of energy resources is a major threat. Follow the Kobesi letter, folks. We love the Kobesi letter for always giving us these fantastic threads, keeping us up to date. But the bottom line is, folks, as we put out in our update yesterday, survive till 2025. Inflation is not going away. We are recognizing that a recession is here. It was here last year. Nobody wanted to admit it, but it is now coming, and we're admitting that it's here now today. This is on top of the internal chaos that we have here in the United States. Meanwhile, we get made fun of. We're the laughing stock of the world as we say that it's inadvisable for you guys to cut your oil production because we want to load up our strategic petroleum reserve that we dumped last year. We dumped half of our stash last year so that we could bring inflation back down before it peaked up over 10% record inflation that we haven't seen in 40 plus years. We had to rein that back in for political reasons, and we think that it's inadvisable for you guys to cut oil production. And they are laughing at us as they cut productions. They send oil back up every time that we reach back down to $70, and this is impacting us Americans back home. As I said, the only thing that the United States has to export across the world is a woke agenda and fiat funny money. And the world is laughing at us as they say, no thanks, and they continue on with their program of de-dollarization. De-dollarization and weaponizing commodities, weaponizing energy and the resources that matter most. This is where we're going to see a breakaway and a decouple from the reality that we were experienced since the 1970s when the world was on the petrodollar standard. This party's coming to an end. Now is your time to get on board the train, not get left behind, while these other countries, while these central banks are loading up on precious metals on a record pace that we haven't seen in 50 plus years. Now is your time to pick up the silver, pick up the gold, and pick up the commodities while we can, because they're backing their economies by real oil, real commodities, real energy, and then they're also backing it up with monetary commodities like gold, like silver, playing a role. And you guys understand that XRP, Ripple, has many partnerships within many of these countries as well. So we'll see how far those connections go. What do you need to tokenize all forms of value in this internet of value, all commodities on a ledger that is a unified ledger? Well, that would be XRP. We'll see how far XRP goes in doing that. But nonetheless, I wanted to give you guys this World War III update. What's taking place? Counteroffensive is being launched. The skirmishes taking place over there. We continue to pray for peace. But how is this affecting us back home? Well, it's in the form of higher energy, inflation not going away, recession is here. You guys better be prepared because the internal chaos is going to continue for the next year and a half as they have solidified the fatal death blow to the United States dollar by raising this debt ceiling, no limit, no cap, full agenda for the next year and a half with Joe Biden, Joe running the show. You guys know that deal. And so what can we do about it? Secure and expand our income. We are saving precious metals. That's going to be our silver. That's going to be our gold. That's going to be real commodities that are going to run the new financial system. And then we are getting liquid for the sale of a lifetime because they are bringing max pain. This is a war that is being fought, currencies, commodities, and kinetically on the ground as well. Hopefully this thing comes to a peaceful resolution here soon, but I will tell you what is not going to end here until they have seen this, the end of the US dollar standard, the end of the petrodollar standard, forward, and that's going to be the de-dollarization process. That's not ending until they've accomplished their mission. Don't get left behind with the rest of the Americans that are watching the mainstream news and they have no idea what's hitting them. They're wondering, why did my portfolio, my 401k, go down 20% last year? Why aren't stocks going back up? Oh, please pass the debt ceiling deal so that the stocks can go back up. Meanwhile, the de-dollarization process continues. You have weaponized commodities and resources, and they will not stop until they see this agenda all the way through. Make sure that you guys are prepared and that you're protecting your families, protecting your 401k, your equity, your real estate. It's all coming back home here in the United States right now, and we are experiencing more pain coming through the next year and a half as they move full force with their agenda, but it doesn't have to be the case for your family, your business, and your community. Let's take advantage of this. Let's survive. Let's thrive. Get tapped into my website, ZachRector.com. Smash that thumbs up on the way out and make sure you hit that notification bell. God bless all of you guys. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.